In Ghostbusters 2, the once celebrated team faces disrepute but must reunite to fight a new supernatural threat, Vigo the Carpathian, who aims to return to the world of the living by possessing a child. The Ghostbusters, grappling with their personal and professional struggles, employ their unique ghost-catching expertise and innovative gadgets to tackle the growing paranormal activity in the River of Slime under New York City. As they fight to save the city from impending doom, they rediscover their friendship and the city's belief in their heroism. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're talking about Ghostbusters 2, whether it should be watched, whether you should go back and rewatch it, how you may remember it, how it may compare to the first movie or compare to the newer movies. What we're going to do, a little bit of something different. We're each going to take about 2 minutes, give you our opinions, a review, different themes we saw in the movie, our favorite parts, whatever we want to talk about for 2 minutes. And then we'll come back together and kind of discuss a little bit and then move on to the next person. So I think we're going to start with Nathan Snyder today. Nathan, what'd you think of Ghostbusters 2?
There is a famous psychology experiment that may have inspired something in this film. There was an experiment where people yelled at a plant and called it bad names to see if it would die. And supposedly the plant died. Now, I think that experiment was later disproven, but the slime was a really cool concept in the film. See, they found this slime under the city, and Ray is yelling at it, calling it names, and the slime is reacting to it, like absorbing his anger. Well, they come to find out that this slime actually absorbs whatever energy is thrown into it, right? So eventually the slime is growing because New York City is really angry. And so it's absorbing the anger and basically amplifying it. Now, from a spiritual perspective, that's interesting because Cain and Abel's story, where God tells Cain before he kills his brother Abel, hey, master your emotions or they will master you. Well, he doesn't master them, and then he kills his brother. So they kind of took that in that experiment and put them in this film. Unfortunately, the movie is a lot cheesier than the first one. But if you like so bad it's good movies, it is so bad it's good. Kind of like Batman and Robin. However, the last 20 minutes is kind of hard to get through because of the moral of the story is the power of friendship and love will change everything, which can be more insufferable than scuba diving with a scuba tank filled with farts. But I liked it.
Wow, that's an interesting take. I can see that. I guess, maybe. I've never heard about that experiment. That was kind of cool. I don't know if that would happen with the plant, but I think the slime, ectoplasm, I think they treat that more as a living thing than just an object like a plant or a coffee cup or a blimp. So all that anger going towards it, and that's kind of the moral of the whole movie, and we'll go through that a little bit more, but they're in New York, and what they're saying is everyone is just mad all the time. And what this is doing is creating that slime and making that slime evil, just making more madness and anger come back up, and people get even angrier as it goes on. I can see that happening in the movie, and that's kind of how things can happen in real life. I mean, obviously, if you're in a situation where you're just getting put down, abused, you're just in anger all the time, that can definitely affect how you can be. I mean, I'm a perfect example. I've had to cut off politics on YouTube because, I watch both sides and listen to different people and their opinions and how things are going. And it's just like, I get angry. And then I have to go into work and deal with people. And it's like, oh, okay, I can't be that guy, So I've almost completely cut off political podcasts and anything else that I watch. I don't watch the news. I'm just like, keep me away from that. And I think it's kind of what's happening today. That movie came out 1989, so 34 years ago, 35 years ago. But it still holds strong today. That stuff can really affect people.
Still relevant.
Yep. Drew, any comments on that, or you want to go ahead and give your 2 minutes?
I think that was pretty good. I'll just go ahead and get my 2 minutes in. I'll tell you one thing. I definitely would not compare it to the same way that Nathan did. And I don't think Nathan and I see this the same way. I don't think Ghostbusters 2 is as charming as the original was. The original one is almost a perfect film, and it's so hard to top that. But it's got its moments in its own way. It's filmed a little bit differently. The style's a little bit differently, but the characters are still the same. It takes a little different story. But, you know, I just watched it again last night, and I picked up on some things that I didn't pick up the first time. A couple little lines of dialogue that are extremely funny. It's still got the humor. It's still got the great characters. And I think it's I think it's worth the watch. And I'm not going to step on Doug's toes because I know where he's going to go with his review on this. But I'm just going to say in advance, I agree with exactly what Doug is going to say about why Ghostbusters 2 is looked down upon maybe more than it is the original one. And he calls it the Ghostbusters 2 effect, which is exactly what happened here. But I think it's well worth the watch. I think it's got some really good moments in it. And yeah, it's kind of corny in some areas, but I don't know. I think some of the characters are good. The villain is kind of an interesting villain that you don't know much about. I got a little story about him though. That's not his voice in the movie. The actor had a super thick accent and nobody could understand a word he said. So they had to go back and they had to overdub his voice. And I don't know if I'm going to have time to get into his story because I got to look up his name real quick. But the actor has a very interesting background, which maybe after Doug goes, I'll throw in a little bit about the actor there. But I don't think it's like scuba diving with a tank of farts. It's I think it's well worth the watch. I think it's a good sequel. And it's enjoyable, in my opinion.
No, I'm interested. I looked up the guy who played Vigo, and I think the only other thing I recognized him in was Die Hard. He was one of the bad guys. I don't think he had a line. But I am curious. Got another minute. Go ahead. Tell us what his interesting background is.
Okay, so the actor who played Vigo was named Wilhelm von Homburg, and he was born in Germany during World War II. He grew up in Nazi Germany. What's interesting about him is he only had like really 2 acting roles. He was in this and he was in Die Hard. But his accent was so thick that no one could understand a word he was saying on set. So Max von Sydow came in and actually did the voice to Vigo. He has a brother. His mom gave birth to his brother at the same time that his father's girlfriend gave birth to him. So he's got the same age as his brother. His dad ended up remarrying to another lady who is closer to the same age as Wilhelm. And rumor has it that he may or may not have fathered his sister. So I'm not going to get too much more into that. If you want to know more about Wilhelm von Homburg, you can go look him up for yourself. But he's got a very disturbing history, which almost makes him perfect for that role.
He might need a hug.
I wouldn't.
I'm not going to hug.
So anyway, Doug, let's hear your 2 cents on this.
All right. So Drew mentioned it, the Ghostbusters 2 effect. I've mentioned this a few times in the past podcasts, but if you haven't seen those, here's what it is. Ghostbusters was the perfect movie. You had comedy, you had drama, you had frights, you had action, everything that you needed in a movie, and it was just done so well, written perfectly, such an intelligent comedy. You can't improve on that. It's just so hard. Now, yes, you can improve on special effects, you can improve on, stuff like that, but just being there when that movie came out and witnessing everything for the first time. That's why, it's the same thing. I call it the Ghostbusters 2 effect, but you could call it the Star Wars effect too. There's a lot of people who say episode 1 or 4, Star Wars: A New Hope, is the greatest Star Wars ever. And then you have a lot of people saying the Empire is going to be the greatest ever. And then you have Nathan who says Return of the Jedi is the greatest ever. But anyway, those people who like the first one, it's because you never saw anything like that. And that's the same thing with Ghostbusters. You did not see that type of comedy. So when you go to Ghostbusters 2, it's just not going to be as good. it rarely, I mean, you've got to have the perfect full moon, get struck by lightning 3 times, standing in the same place while finding 17 4-leaf clovers. That's how Godfather 2 came about. Okay. So, that just doesn't happen. So when they did part 2, I mean, if you have to go back and watch it. I mean, every character is the same person they were in the first one and just as funny. But yeah, the story was lacking a little bit. And I think, when they were writing this, they, obviously it was like, we need a part 2 and we need it quick. And, it came out 5 years later, but it takes a bit to really sit down and write something deep like the first movie. So when the second one came out, I liked what they did. Basically it was a movie about, hey, New York or the world, be nicer to each other. That's the whole theme of the movie. And that they do a great job portraying that. I mean, the Statue of Liberty walking at the end, a little bit cheesy. Yeah, 100%. You got your product placement with the Nintendo joystick they're using and everything like that. But if you just watch the movie and, kind of ignore the story, just watch the movie, see what the characters do, they're still amazingly funny. So it is totally worth going back and watching, in my opinion.
Now, I will say that I actually might have enjoyed the second one better just up until the last 20 minutes. I know it was cheesier, but I found that fun and engaging. So, yeah, it's definitely not a better movie than 1, but I did find myself entertained for most of it.
Yeah. And, you see it different ways, too. I mean, how old were you when you saw Ghostbusters 2? I mean,
Well,
did
I
you
thought I
see it
saw
as
it as a kid, but I
Oh,
actually
really?
realized when I started it 2 weeks ago that I had not seen it. And I remembered parts of
Yeah.
Ghostbusters 1 as Ghostbusters 2. So I actually saw it for the first time 2 weeks ago as a 37-year-old.
There you go. So, and I was a 14-year-old
I
when
was
I watched
10.
it. So, again, I'm not ripping your opinion by any means, but I think that, I don't know, just that experience of seeing Ghostbusters in the theater for the first time in the 80s, and you just never saw anything like that. It just carried over to part 2 for me. And still, when I go back and watch it today, it's still got that great Bill Murray humor. There's probably 2 or 3 times where he just does the look that, he didn't say anything. All he does is just his face, which I can't do. No one's laughing at that. But when he does it, he does it. He's a genius. All of them were.
When he's talking to Oscar, the whole interaction. Oh, you poor man. You're named after a hot dog. Oh, you poor. Yes, he stinks. I mean, did his dad stink?
It's so funny.
Yeah.
So funny.
So maybe Ghostbusters 2 wasn't quite the sequel fans wanted, but Afterlife might be, so watch this video next.